The email landed just as I finalized the closing documents for a biotech acquisition. Outside my office window, the Los Angeles skyline shimmered under a pale December sun. It was December 22nd. Sienna, sweetie, about Christmas this year. With your brother Noah bringing his new fiancée, she's a film producer. You know, we thought it might be better if you sat this one out. You understand, right? Love, Mom. I stared at the message. Then I laughed, dry, short, hollow. 12 years, and nothing had changed. Despite everything I'd built, I was still the outlier, the piece that didn't fit. What they didn't know was that the freelance consultant they'd dismissed all those years ago had become Sienna Brooks, CEO of Crest Point Advisors, the firm orchestrating billion-dollar deals across 3 continents. The intercom buzzed. "Ms. Brooks," Callie said, "the avionics gen board is waiting on the video call." "Thank you, Callie." I smoothed the crisp sleeves of my charcoal suit. My family still believed I bought my clothes off clearance racks. I let them. 12 years ago, I'd walked out of our Sacramento ranch house, turning down a junior role at Brooks & Sons Capital. "You're making a huge mistake," my father had thundered. "You think you're smarter than all of us." Noah had leaned back, arms folded, smirking. "Let her try. She'll come crawling back." I never did. I arrived in LA with nothing but an aging laptop and an idea. Crest Point was born from grit and silence. Now, it quietly held stakes in half the businesses Brooks & Sons managed. A knock at the door pulled me back. Callie entered, holding a sleek black folder. "The contract from Brooks & Sons, ready for your signature." I smiled. So, they'd finally come knocking. I picked up the pen, paused, set it down. "Actually, Callie, cancel it, and Merry Christmas." The words tasted sweeter than champagne. They didn't know the lifeline they were reaching for belonged to the daughter they had once cut off without hesitation. My phone buzzed with a new message. From Noah. Subject, Tiana. "Mom told me about Christmas. Don't take it personally. You know how she is. Jasmine's career is visible. It's just simpler this way. Maybe once you're more established, we can go back to how things were." Once I'm established. I looked at the 7-figure deal sitting on my desk, one that would launch Brooks & Sons into international markets they couldn't crack without me. I'd seen the internal numbers, heard the rumors. My father had already been boasting to investors about the partnership. All it needed was my signature. Callie reappeared, holding an iPad. "Your father's on Zoom. He's asking to confirm tomorrow's ceremony." I nodded, then tapped to join. "This is Sienna Brooks." I always used my mother's maiden name in business. It kept me invisible. "Sienna, hey, everything," my father boomed. Too loud, too cheerful. The same man who once called my startup a vanity project. "Just confirming we're good for tomorrow. This deal is, well, it means everything." I thought of the empty chairs at Christmas, Noah's smugness, the years of being unseen. "Actually, Mr. Brooks," I said, voice even, "I've reviewed the terms. I have concerns." "Concerns?" he faltered. "But, it's all been approved." "Things change," I replied. "Let's discuss it in person. Bring the whole family. Brooks & Sons is a family firm, isn't it?" "Of course. My wife, Noah, Jasmine. All your children, Mr. Brooks," I said, my voice like glass. A pause. "Well, Sienna's not exactly all your children." He exhaled, defeated. "Understood." Good. I ended the call. Tomorrow would be a reckoning. I leaned back, eyes on the glimmering skyline. Tomorrow, they'd step into Crest Point's headquarters expecting a nameless CEO. Instead, they'd meet the daughter they erased. Callie appeared again. "Should I prep the executive conference room?" I nodded, running a finger across the embossed contract. "Yes. And Callie, bring in photographers. I want every reaction documented." That night, I stayed late, reviewing every detail. This wasn't a deal. It was a turning point. My family had always cared about appearances. Tomorrow, they'd finally see what power really looked like. And Christmas? It would never look the same again. I raised an eyebrow. Really? The power couple can't handle a few headlines? She said she can't be tied to a sinking ship. He muttered, a bitter laugh slipping out. I don't fit her image anymore. The irony settled between us, thick and undeniable. Dad's drinking again, he added, voice lower. The board's in panic mode. Mom can't even show her face at the club. Everything's unraveling. Because of me? I asked, calm. He shook his head. No, because we built everything on appearances, just like my relationship. I nodded once. You all treated success like it had one look, and I never fit it. I deserved that, he said softly. You deserved more, I said, voice sharpening. Do you know what it felt like? Watching you all celebrate each other while pretending I didn't exist? Mom threw parties for every one of your promotions. She never even remembered what I do. We thought you were struggling. You never asked. I snapped, rising to my feet. Not once. In 12 years, no one asked about my company, my team, or my vision. You were too busy dismissing me to realize I passed all of you. His silence was louder than an apology. Then, finally, tears, not performative ones, filled his eyes. I was awful to you. Yeah. Can you ever forgive me? He asked, voice trembling. I met his gaze, steady. This isn't about forgiveness, Noah. It's about trust. And that, you'll have to earn. Suddenly, the doors burst open. My parents swept in, ignoring Callie's protests. Sienna, my father barked, though the thunder was gone. This has gone far enough. You've made your point. Oh, I said coolly. And what point is that? That you're successful, my mother said, breathless. That we were wrong. We see you now, sweetheart. So please, stop punishing us. I let out a cold laugh. You think this is about revenge? Or proving something? I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out at the glowing Los Angeles skyline. No, this is about consequences. About understanding that your choices, your pride, have a price. We're your parents, my father said, voice cracking. Everything we did was to protect you. I turned slowly. No, everything you did was to protect your image. I held up my tablet, headlines blaring across the screen. Congratulations. That image? It's shattered. A failing firm, a broken engagement, and a family in pieces. What do you want from us? Noah asked quietly. What I wanted, I said slowly, was your belief while I built Crest Point, your respect when I made it, to be treated like family, not like a mistake. I let the silence breathe. But now, I don't want anything. Tears slipped down my mother's face. I didn't flinch. I'd seen those tears before. When I chose the wrong college. When I didn't take the Brooks and Sons job. When I disappointed the family narrative. Oh, Sienna, it's almost Christmas, she whispered. Yes, I said, the same Christmas I was too much of a failure to be invited to. I tilted my head. Tell me, do you still care about appearances? Or did that vanish the moment your golden boy cracked? My father stepped forward. Just tell us what it'll take. Board seats? Equity? A public statement? I shook my head. You still don't get it. I don't want what you have. My voice softened. Crest Point is worth 10 times what Brooks and Sons ever was. What I wanted was a family who valued me, not for what I could do, but for who I am. I pressed the intercom. Callie, please show them out, and update the security list. Sienna, please, my mother whispered. We can fix this. No, I said quietly. You don't fix 12 years of silence with one apology. As the door closed behind them, I stood in the quiet. The city glittered beneath me. Then, my phone buzzed. What happened? Your grandmother would be proud. Christmas dinners at my place this year, Margaret. I smiled. For the first time in years, I'd spend the holidays where I truly belonged. A quiet warmth settled in my chest. Sometimes, family isn't who you're born to, it's who shows up when no one else does. The next morning, I gathered my executive team at Crest Point Advisors. We were launching our boldest vision yet, a complete shakeup of the consulting industry, beginning with the acquisition of 3 mid-tier West Coast firms. Brooks and Sons wasn't on the list. As I stood before the board, outlining our plan, my thoughts drifted, just for a moment, to my parents' Christmas dinner. The polished table. The overpriced wine. The empty toasts. all of it clinging to a crumbling illusion. And me? I was building something real. A week later, Callie placed a small package on my desk. Inside was my grandmother's leather business card holder, and a note from Margaret. She always said you'd outshine them all. Looks like she was right. I placed it beside my nameplate, a quiet reminder. Success isn't defined by who shows up once you've made it. It's who believed in you while you were still climbing. My family fought to preserve an image. They got one, but not the one they wanted. As for me, I had the life I built. Respected, fulfilling, unapologetically mine. So when someone asked, "Do you ever miss your family?" I smiled, turned back to my desk, and said, "I have a company to run. That's worth more than any seat at their table." If you've ever been underestimated, this is your story too. I didn't build my life to prove them wrong. I built it to prove I was right, to trust the quiet fire inside me. If this resonates, share your story below. Or just say, "I see you." Because sometimes, that's everything. You don't need their table. Build your own. And one day, they'll wish they had a seat there. By 6 a.m., I was already in my office. The 52nd floor conference room shimmered, white orchids lined the polished walnut table, and the Los Angeles skyline glowed gold through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Callie entered, calm and composed. "Your family's here, bring them up?" I glanced at my reflection in the glass. Gone were the soft sweaters and modest shoes they remembered. Today, I wore a tailored charcoal Armani suit, sharp Louis Vuitton heels, and my grandmother's vintage Cartier watch, the last gift from the only woman who'd ever believed in me without conditions. "Let them wait," I said, adjusting my jacket. "I'll make an entrance." 20 minutes later, I stepped into the private elevator, watching the floor numbers rise. My phone buzzed, a message from my mother. "Sienna, where are you? Your father says this meeting is crucial. Don't embarrass us." I smiled and slipped the phone into my pocket. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see them, Dad pacing, Mom adjusting Noah's tie, Jasmine rehearsing her smile, and the senator already bored, flipping through the contract. I gave Callie a nod. She opened the doors and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Sienna Brooks, CEO of Crest Point Advisors." The room froze, tension sparked through the air like static. I stepped inside, each click of my heels echoing sharply against the marble. My mother's champagne flute slipped from her fingers, shattering. My father's face drained of color, but it was Noah's silence that landed the hardest, his usual smugness wiped clean. "Good morning," I said coolly, settling at the head of the table. "Shall we begin?" "This is absurd," my father snapped. "You're a freelance consultant." "Am I?" I held up a black folder. "Because according to these documents, I'm the CEO of the firm you've spent months chasing, Crest Point Advisors." The senator leaned forward, suddenly alert. "I'm sorry, what exactly is happening here?" I turned to Jasmine, smiling politely. "Oh, I would have explained it at Christmas dinner, but I wasn't invited. Something about appearances, I believe." My mother opened her mouth, desperate. "Sienna, sweetheart, this is a misunderstanding." "Is it?" I said flatly. I tapped a button on the remote. The screen behind me flickered to life. "Let's review." Up came Mom's email, asking me not to come home for the holidays. Then Noah's message, brushing off my career as luck. And finally, Dad's glowing pitches to Crest Point, never realizing he'd been pleading with his own daughter. The room went still. Callie moved quietly between them, placing fresh contract packets in front of each guest. Dad flipped through his, confusion turning to dread. "These aren't the same terms, they've changed." I revised them. "I've had 12 years to decide how this day would go." Jasmine leaned in, trying to recover control. "You can't do this. Brooks & Sons has investors. Growth plans? Like the plans I had when I started Crest Point." I cut in. "Plans that were mocked at every holiday table." "That was different," Mom whispered. "We were protecting you from failure." "No," I said, rising. "You weren't protecting me. You were protecting yourselves, your status, your narrative." I motioned toward the blazing skyline. "Congratulations. Today, the world finds out who the Brooks family really is." I adjusted the cuff of my blazer. "The partnership is off." I said. Crest Point will acquire avionics gen directly. My father slumped into his chair. Without the Crest Point deal, Brooks & Sons would lose access to Europe and any hope of global expansion. You can't do this, he muttered. We're family. I paused at the doorway. Family? Yesterday, you said I wasn't established enough to be family. I tilted my head, half smiling. I wonder, will I finally be invited to Christmas dinner now? And then I walked out. Behind me, silence. Through the glass, I saw Mom dabbing tears, Dad frozen with disbelief, and Noah, speechless for once, stripped of every ounce of superiority. Callie fell into step beside me. That was intense. Are you okay? My phone buzzed, another message from Mom. Sienna, please come for Christmas. We need to fix this. I exhaled slowly. Cancel Christmas dinner, I said. I've got better plans. I didn't reply. Crest Point completed the avionics gen acquisition, and Brooks & Sons began its slow decline. Headlines weren't kind. Brooks & Sons reels after failed merger. Crest Point dominates global expansion. Power shift in West Coast finance. A week later, I was reviewing acquisition proposals when Callie reappeared. Your brother's here, she said gently. Third time this week. But he's alone. I pulled up the lobby feed. Noah stood there, shoulders slumped, tie loose, circles under his eyes. The arrogance was gone. He looked human. Send him up. He entered quietly, scanning the space he once considered out of my league. Panoramic skyline, modern art, confidence woven into every surface. Nice office, he muttered, bigger than anything I ever had. Not that it matters now. I didn't answer, just waited. He dropped into the chair across from me. No posturing, no smirk. Jasmine called off the engagement, he said, eyes fixed on the floor.